everyone. I'm Naomi. I'll be moderating, hosting, doing the Q&A this evening. I'm a volunteer for BINA and also the online communications officer, where I facilitate dialogue with all of you in our online spaces such as BINA Conversations and the BINA fan page. Welcome everybody. I want to first start out by thanking our very generous host tonight, the Fischel family. This is the second time they've opened up their home to us for a BINA at home, so we're really grateful. For those of you who don't know what BINA is a community of young professionals or young graduate students between the ages of 25 and 45 here in Los Angeles, made up of Israelis, American Jews, and anyone in between. And we come together around intellectual ideas and cultural activities and anything related to do with our community, strengthening our community, and creating a stronger connection to Israel. Tonight, we are really privileged and honored to be hosting BINA at Home with member of Knesset, Yoel Hasson. Yoel Hasson is a member of the 18th Knesset and currently holds the prestigious role of chairman of the State Control Committee. As a member of the Knesset, he has had roles such as the Kadima Party Whip and chairman of the coalition. He is considered a rising star in Israeli politics, and he currently holds party seat number 11 in the last election. He's also one of the youngest members of the Knesset. Since becoming a member, he has been active in the following communities: the House Committee, the Economics Committee, acting member of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, Education, Culture, Sports Committee, Finance, and he has also been the chairman of the Lobby for the Advancement of Young People in Israel and the Lobby for Protection of Animal Rights in Israel. So pretty much any question you have about Israel, you can ask Yoel. Prior to serving as an elected official, he was an advisor to Prime Minister Ariel Sharon as part of his political staff. He's also headed the Public Affairs Department at the Prime Minister's office. He holds a bachelor's degree in Government and Public Policy from the Interdisciplinary Center in Herzliya, and he's currently pursuing his master's in government with a focus on terrorism and security. He is originally from Rishon LeZion and currently lives in Tel Aviv. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome member of Knesset, Yoel Hasson.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm very happy and glad to be here. The Fischel family, first of all, thank you very much for hosting all this event. And I'm very, very touched and glad to see so many young people that care about Israel, care about the Jewish people, come and listen to MK. I don't understand you, but if you choose it, no, I'm laughing, of course. I really understand it, and I appreciate that you came. And I think, I just came now from a few days ago. This is actually the main reason why I'm in the United States. I came from Washington, D.C. And I came for a big event. I don't know if you heard about that. It's the prayer breakfast. The prayer breakfast is a very, very big event in Washington, D.C. That in the final day of this event, President Obama is actually taking part in this event, and we have kind of big breakfast with the president, usually with the president of the United States. But this event is actually an event that gives you a great opportunity to meet and speak with a lot of senators and congressmen from the United States. And we are usually choosing to come. Of course, they invite us, but we got a lot of invitation to a lot of events, but we are usually very insist to come to this event because it gave us great opportunity to speak about Israel and to speak about the relationship between Israel and the United States, to speak about the region, to speak about the core issues that we are sharing with the United States and the friendship that we have with the United States. And I want you to know, always when you meet with senators and congressmen, you feel that you should start from the beginning to explain the basic things about the situation about Israel. But in the 99% of the member of Congress and senators, you see people that are actually so updated about Israel, so updated about the region. And you know that the reason of that is the Jewish community in the United States. And the fact that the Jewish people are so active in the politics in America, are so involved in the election, always speaking about Israel, always represent Israel. So I know that part of you probably now have this influence, and no doubt that in the future you're going to have more influence also. And the fact that I see so many young people here, it's something that really gave me a lot of hope, because you know, I've been a lot of time in the United States. I have a great connection with a lot of Jewish communities in the most of the states in the United States. And usually when you're coming to these places, you come to a very fancy buildings, big synagogues, big Jewish centers. And always when I see that most of the audience is more older people. And always I'm thinking to myself, who is going to replace them? What's going to be 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Because the most of the youngs are not coming and taking part in the Jewish activities, in the Zionist activities, in all these events and events that they are actually doing in the Jewish Center. And the fact that I see so many young people here, it's really given me hope, because I believe that we are the Jewish people, we are one. Part of us living in Israel, part of us living out of Israel, but we are one. We have the same future, the same destiny. We should support each other. We should work together. You need a strong Israel, and we need a strong Jewish communities in the United States. And that's why I'm here. That's why I believe in that. And that's why for me to see you, as I said, it gave me a really, really great hope. We have some challenges today in Israel that we are dealing with, and I think that one of them is, of course, to try and bring peace to Israel. And I think that the issue of peace, usually people look at that as compromises, what we are ready to compromise, what we are need to do. From my point of view, the question of peace is to decide and to take the tough decision and to make sure that we're keeping Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. Because this is our vision. This is the story of Israel. All what we did, all what we are doing is actually because we want to keep and make sure that we have homeland for the Jewish people. And when I worked with Ariel Sharon, and originally I came from Beitar, from Likud, now I'm from Kadima party, that you probably heard about. Tzipi Livni, she's the head of the party. This is the main opposition party. But when we came to Kadima, and when we actually created Kadima, and when we actually wanted to make these changes, we understood that we have in Israel a demographic problem. We have a demographic problem. We need to make sure that we are keeping Israel a Jewish state by the democratic way, by the fact that most of the citizens in Israel choose to live in a Jewish state. And that's why we need to decide and take these tough decisions, difficult decisions of actually doing or decide what is our final border of Israel. And it's not easy. I know for a lot of people to compromise about some of the lands in the West Bank, it's a tough decision. It's not easy. I can understand that. I believe and I know that the Jewish people and the Israeli people have full rights all on Judea and Samaria and the West Bank, in the West Bank. No doubt about that. If I send every one of you to dig deep in the land of Ramallah, Nablus, all these places, probably you're going to find a Jewish proof of a Jewish existing in these places 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. No doubt about that. But today the solution or the compromise should be a demographic compromise. If we are not going to make this divide, if we are not going to make this separation between us and them, one day the international community going to make a pressure on Israel to give the Palestinians full rights and the main rights of voting to the Knesset. The result of that going to be that we are going to lose 10, 20 years from now the Jewish majority in Israel. And then it's the end of the vision of the Jewish state. That's why I believe we should take this tough decision and go to the two-state solution and of course, we have our security demands and our red lines. We are talking about keeping the main Jewish blocks under Israeli control, keeping the control of Israel in the holy city of Jerusalem, and to make sure that we have a security guarantees, international security guarantees from all over the world. But still, finally, it should be a demographic solution, a separation between us and them. Every day that we are not doing that, is putting in a risk the existence of Israel as a Jewish state. And I'm really afraid from that, and I hope that we're going to see a reality. Today it's not actually exists, but I hope we're going to see a reality of direct negotiation between us and the Palestinians. And it was, I think, also a huge mistake in the beginning, in 2009, when Obama started his presidency and when Netanyahu was elected to be a prime minister. In the first meeting between them, came from Obama and all other side also, a precondition to negotiate. It was a mistake. From the beginning, it was needed to be a direct negotiation without any precondition, discussing all the core issues. And when you negotiate, when you're sitting, you can talk about everything. It's not saying that you agree for everything, that you can speak about everything. And this is what really needed to be in Israel. And the fact, as I said, that we don't have it today, it's damaging Israel. And I believe in that, and I think, and I'm doing whatever I can to push to this direction. I think also that United States should push to this direction. The second main challenge is, of course, it's the Iranian issue. The Iranian issue is actually became to be more and more a serious issue, complicated issue, that's going to influence very much the future, and listen carefully, not the future of Israel, not the future of the Middle East. It's going to influence the future of the free world. Iran want to have the nuclear weapon not because they want to attack Israel day after. They are not going to do it so fast because they know what's going to be the result of that. They want to have the nuclear weapon because they want to control the world economy, and they want to control the Middle East. You all remember our friend Gaddafi. You remember him? A few years ago, he decided to stop his nuclear program. He announced that. Everyone was so happy from that. He decided not to continue in the direction of nuclear program. Today, we all know that for him, it was a really lousy decision. Because if Gaddafi still had today, not a nuclear weapon, a nuclear program, nobody was touching him. Nobody was touching him. You cannot imagine any military operation that's going to come from Italy if they even thought that they have a possibility of nuclear weapon. So he lost his insurance policy. And Iran know that like nobody touching North Korea today, nobody touched North Korea today, no matter what North Korea do, nobody going to touch Iran if Iran going to have the nuclear weapon. And if they're going to have the nuclear weapon, I'm telling you, everything that you are buying today going to cost at least double than what you are paying today. They're going to control the oil fields in the Middle East. They know exactly that if they're going to have this nuclear weapon, they know they control the most of the regime in the Middle East. They know that they can control the oil field in the Middle East. And more of that, they can continue controlling and have a lot of influence on the terror organization and the extremist group in the Middle East. I can tell you, Iran with a nuclear weapon, no peace in the Middle East. No peace in the Middle East. They're not going to allow nobody to sign a peace agreement with Israel. That's why, as I said in the beginning, it's not only an Israeli problem. This is a problem that should be led and dealt by United States, Europe, and Israel. And the fact that we have today the decision of sanctions against Iran It's a very positive step. Fortunately, Russia and China are damaging this sanction. If Russia and China was part of that, no doubt the sanction was more influence and better influence. But still the sanction is okay. And it's good and it's the right direction. But even when you are doing sanction, you need to make sure and check that it's actually making the change, that it's actually influence. And it's also important to say that we are, the Israelis, and I believe the Americans, the Europeans also, we don't have nothing against the Iranian people. The Iranian people actually captured by this regime. They are captured by this regime. I believe and I know that the most of the Iranian people, they are liberal, they are moderate, they are secular, but they are actually captured by this regime. And this regime is the problem. And in any case, we know that we cannot allow the Iranian to have the nuclear weapon. And this should be international coalition. And this is something that all of you can have influence on that. Because you are involved in American politics. And you can speak with congressmen, with senators, with governors, to explain them. You know what? Even to speak about that with your friends, the place that you work, in the universities, in the college, in everything, every place that you go. Speak about that. Explain that. Because a lot of American people, let's say, I hope not. I'm not pushing for that. I hope it's not going to be the way to solve that, but think that maybe a military operation is going to be an option. Maybe it's going to be the final option. I hope not. I hope we're going to stop it without that. But let's say it's going to happen. It's not going to be like, and I know that a lot of Americans are afraid from that, it's not going to be like the Iraq war. We don't need to occupy Iran. We don't need to send soldiers to Iran. We just need to do a very specific operation without getting into details. Again, this is the last option. We need to try and make sure that we are trying all the other ways to stop this nuclear program. But if not, I can tell you, as one of the Israeli leaders, we are never going to put in a risk again the existence of the Jewish people. Never. We have full responsibility for our people, for our country, for our history, and we are aware for that very, very much. And also we have in Israel, you know, we are very close to election time probably in Israel. Now we have in Kadima election, it's going to be in other parties' election. And I don't want to get into politics, but I wanted to say something about the political system in Israel. We need to make, and it's urgent for us, we need to make a reform in our electoral law in Israel. The system today is not actually letting you to get a picture of a real representative of the majority in Israel. Today, because of our political system, the minority is actually ruling. The majority, I don't have any, they have maybe 60% of influence. The most of the things leading by the small parties. And we need to do two things. First one, to increase the minimum percent that you need today to get into the Knesset, a party. The minimum percent that the party need to get in today is 2.5. We have today in Israel, how many parties we have in Israel, you know? Give me a number. 12, you said?
20-something.
What?
25?
No. 100? No. Maybe, you know, because we have 120 members of Knesset. Maybe every one of us feel like we are one party, you know. This is maybe one of the problems. It was a smart thing to say. We have actually 16 parties. 16, 1-6. It's too much. We need to minimize the number of the parties. We must doing that. Because when we're going to have less parties, we're going to have more stable system. And this is something that's very urgent and very important to do. The second thing that we should do, and I said it, and we said it before what happened to Kadima in 2009, we said it before, we need to do something very clearly. The head of the biggest party, that got the most of the votes, is automatically become to be the Prime Minister of Israel. Without any coalition, without any approval from the president, he is the Prime Minister. Now, you want to be part of the coalition? You want to be part of power? Convince the Prime Minister to take you with him. Not in the opposite. Today, the Prime Minister, that he got the most of the votes, he needs to convince the parties to join to him. And it's not only convince, it's also pay a lot. And we need to change it. We need to change this system, and I believe this is the first thing that we should do, and then go to a district system. But this is not immediately. This should took some time. Before that, we need to stable our system. And I'm telling you as a young politician, but with a lot of experience, I'm almost 60 in the Knesset. I can tell you if it's going to continue like that, I'm very worried about the way that you actually can rule the country and take the tough decisions. And not only the big issues, also intra issues. Give you an example, because you are a young group, so I feel free to speak about that. You know, all the issue that was with all the youngest in Israel that went out in the summer to protest about what they want. What actually was their demand? They wanted to have a real opportunity to buy a house, to have a house, to own a house in Israel. Something that's become to be very, very expensive. And today, the government decide, maybe because of a protest, maybe, I don't know, they decide to create kind of a plan, a program that helping young people to encourage them and help them to buy their first house. But when you saw the principle of the program, you see that if you want to get help from the government, you need to have some score, some points, credits. But how you reach the credit? They gave all kind of rules that the only best for you to get the most of the credit you can, it's only if you are ultra-Orthodox. As example, you need to be married you need to be married long time to get a lot of credit. You need to have a lot of children. So again, because the Minister of Housing is from the ultra-Orthodox Shas party. So when he made the plan, he wanted to give more priority to his people. And again, the minority take over all the majorities. And even after the Prime Minister interfered and tried to change, still, even they changed some of the balance between the two groups, still the ultra-Orthodox going to get more credit and more options and more help from the government to buy their first house. And again, the ultra-Orthodox part of Israel, they are part of our people. They are full citizens, they should have help. But we have also other people that should have help, should need help. And this is why we need to change the system. We need to find a situation that the majority is actually getting the influence in Israel. Getting the influence in Israel and give to our young people hope. And finally, before question, with all the problem and with all the really serious challenges that we have, I'm super optimistic about Israel. Really, it's important to say. Israel, from all the issues that you can check, is one of the successful countries in the world. We have amazing achievements. This is a country that starts with nothing. You know, I'm always, when I meet my friends and we are speaking about that and we are speaking about our grandfathers, our father, mother, our family that came from all over the world, from North Africa and from Europe and from all over the world came to Israel. They came without nothing. Without nothing. And I always, all my life, going to remember my grandfather, that when he was 87 years old, he said, and he came, he was a rabbi in Tunisia. And he made Aliyah in 53, 54, left everything. Got a small house in Rishon LeZion. This is the place that he was when he came, he lived when he came until he died. And I remember when he was 87 years old, we sat all the family together, and he said something that I always going to remember. He said, I paid the price for you. When I see my family today, that everyone educated, have a good life, big family, I'm proud that I paid the price for that. Because you make my dream to be true. And this is the story of the country. This is the story of Israel. The homeland of the Jewish people, that all of them came, most of them came, and living in Israel and created a nation that this nation is not strong because we have army, a strong army. This nation is strong because from the first day of the country, our leadership and our people choose the modern language of the world, speaking about education, technology, science, now high-tech. This is economy. This is the real language of today. And this is why Israel is part of the really free world. And our neighbors is still behind us. Because they didn't understand that this is the new language. Not what kind of missile you have, or what kind of weapon we have. This is history. You need to speak in the new language. And I always say about Israel that we are the Israelis. I believe we are living in an amazing palace. Israel for us is an amazing palace, but in a very bad neighborhood. This is actually our fact. And when you live in a neighborhood like that, you should be always aware, should be always not naive, to understand very carefully who is around you, who is surround you, but never let these things to stop you. Israel never stop, never going to stop, and she's going to be strong and forever for all of us. Thank you very much.